Sorry, this table is for family, my father said. Victor Monroe smiled as he pointed past the white linen tables, past the brass rail separating the dining room from the kitchen, to a gray folding chair beside the busing station. Every time a server pushed through the swinging door, plates clattered into plastic tubs. Lemon disinfectant sat beneath the smell of roasted beef and butter. When I tested the chair with one hand, the cold metal edge caught the inside of my wrist. Rachel can sit there, Dad added. She won't be staying long. My mother's left hand tightened around her napkin. Diane sat between Dad and my younger sister, Paige, with her right arm resting stiffly in her lap. She planted her good hand against the table and tried to move her chair sideways, opening a narrow space beside her. Dad caught the back of her chair before it shifted more than an inch. Easy, honey, you'll fall. Mom's mouth worked around my name. The first sound came out rough and breathy, but I knew it. I had heard her say my name in kitchens, school auditoriums, hospital rooms, and over the phone at 2 a.m. A stroke had slowed the word. It had not erased it. Dad patted her shoulder as though calming a frightened child. Your mother is upset that you came here looking for trouble. At the time, I thought the $3,600 bill was the trap. 11 months later, I knew it had only been the first piece. Before I tell you why I sat down, I hope you're doing well wherever you're listening from. Stay with me, because my family expected me to pay for far more than dinner. And please subscribe if you enjoy stories about women who finally stop purchasing their place at the table. Dad's hand remained on Mom's shoulder. His fingers looked gentle from across the room, the way they had in church photos and family Christmas cards. Up close, his thumb pressed into the fabric of her blouse hard enough to hold her still. Paige lifted her wineglass. Can we not ruin tonight before appetizers? She wore a cream dress that matched the invitation she had emailed me 2 days earlier. The subject line had said, Family Caregiver Appreciation Dinner, all capital letters, as if volume could turn a lie into an event. According to Paige, the evening was meant to honor her and Dad for the months they had spent caring for Mom after her stroke. My name had not appeared anywhere on the invitation. My credit card had once been attached to the reservation account. Mom's gaze moved from the empty space beside her to the folding chair near the kitchen. Her fingers released the napkin, then tapped the tabletop 3 times. The rhythm was slow, even, and deliberate. The sound took me back to a spelling bee when I was 11. I had stood behind a curtain with my palms damp and my stomach rolling, while Mom tapped 3 times against my shoulder. Breathe, then choose. She used the same rhythm before piano recitals, job interviews, and family dinners where Dad had already decided what everyone was allowed to remember. That Sunday night, Mom gave me the only warning she could deliver without Victor translating it into something else. Do not give him the reaction he wants. I pulled the folding chair away from the wall and sat. The front brace pressed into my shin, while a rubber wheel from the dish cart bumped the back leg every few minutes. It's fine, I said. I'll sit here. Dad's smile widened. He mistook restraint for surrender. He had been making that mistake about me since I was old enough to balance his checkbook. Aunt Colleen stared into her water glass. My cousin Beth rearranged the silverware beside her plate, though it had already been set straight. 2 women from Mom's church sat near the far end of the table and gave me the tight, sorrowful smiles people save for someone whose bad behavior has been explained to them in advance. Victor rose to make a toast before the salads arrived. The last 6 months have shown me what family really means, he said. Paige put her entire life on hold for her mother. She gave up clients, sleep, and more than anyone here knows. Paige lowered her eyes and practiced modesty. Dad, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. He rested a hand on her shoulder, lighter than the grip he had used on Mom. People should know who stayed. Aunt Colleen finally looked at me, then glanced away. I could have answered. I could have listed every medical transport I had arranged from my office in Dublin. Every afternoon I had taken off until Dad stopped sharing the appointment schedule. Every call Paige had ignored before telling relatives I never called. None of that would have helped. Victor had invited witnesses, not listeners. So I buttered a dinner roll and watched. That was what I did for a living. When 3 vehicles failed to arrive at 3 different clinics, I did not shout at the dispatch board. I checked who changed the route, when the change happened, and who benefited from the confusion. Families were messier than transportation logs, but people still left patterns. Dad's pattern sat in a blue folder beside his plate. He touched it twice during the toast, first when he mentioned the next stage of Diane's care, then again when he said the family had made difficult but loving decisions. Paige kept watching the folder too. Mom did not. Her eyes stayed on me. The salad plates arrived, followed by steaks, salmon, 2 bottles of wine, and side dishes. No one had asked me whether I wanted. Dad ordered another round for the table. Paige added a seafood tower after the waiter warned that the kitchen was closing soon. Mom can't eat shellfish, I said. Paige gave a quick laugh. It isn't for Mom. Then who is it for? I asked. For the people doing the work. Paige set her menu down. You wouldn't understand. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Dad leaned toward me. Your sister has been bathing your mother, dressing her, taking her to therapy. You show up once in a while with questions and spreadsheets. I haven't received her therapy schedule in 3 months, I said. Because your visits upset her. Victor looked down the table, making sure everyone heard. You come in, interrogate people, and leave Diane exhausted. Mom struck the table once with the side of her left hand. Water jumped inside her glass. Dad caught it before it tipped. See what I mean? The 2 church women murmured sympathetically. I looked at Mom. Her breath came faster through her nose, but her gaze remained steady. She touched 2 fingers to her chest, then pointed toward me. Dad turned the gesture into another lie. She wants you to think about how your choices affect her. Paige reached over and lowered Mom's hand. Let's not make her work so hard tonight. For months, they had been calling every attempt Mom made to speak work, strain, confusion, or fatigue. Anything except an answer. The blue folder slid closer to the edge of the table when Dad reached for the wine. A page shifted inside. I caught the printed logo before he closed it. Maple Glen Memory Care. Beneath the logo, a date appeared beside the words, Proposed Admission. I could not see the whole line, only enough to confirm that the number matched the one Mom had forced out 3 days earlier. Thursday. My fingers stayed around the stem of my water glass. Dad glanced at me, then pulled the folder back against his side. What's in there? I asked. A family care plan, he said. Something responsible people create when a parent needs more help. Did Mom choose Maple Glen? Victor's expression did not change, but the skin beside his mouth tightened. Your mother and I make decisions together. Mom shook her head. Paige immediately lifted a napkin to Mom's mouth, though there was nothing there. She's tired. I could have reached for the folder. Dad was close enough, and the document was less than 2 feet away. But taking it would have given him the scene he wanted. Instead, while Paige argued with the waiter about dessert, I lowered my phone beside my water glass and took 3 photographs of the open page when Dad turned to speak with Aunt Colleen. There was no flash or dramatic movement, only a quiet press of my thumb, followed by the small cloud icon confirming the images had synced to my secure folder. The date on the page was only 11 days away. By the time coffee arrived, everyone except Mom seemed relaxed. Victor told stories about learning to cook low-sodium meals. Paige described sleeping in a chair beside Mom's bed, leaving out the part where a paid aide covered most nights. Relatives praised their devotion, while the woman being discussed sat between them, unable to finish a sentence before one of them finished it for her. Then the waiter brought the bill. He placed the leather folder in front of me. Whenever you're ready, ma'am. I did not open it. Why did you give that to me? The young man looked from me to Dad. The gentleman said you handle the family finances. Victor folded his hands over his stomach. Rachel has always been good with money. It's one of the few ways she contributes. The waiter's ears turned red. I can come back. No need. I opened the folder. $3,600, including the private room fee, 2 bottles of wine, the seafood tower, and a gratuity Paige had apparently promised before I arrived. I slid the bill across the linen until it stopped against Dad's plate. The chair was mine, I said. The bill is yours. For several seconds, no one moved. Paige's hand rested beside her purse, but she did not reach for it. Aunt Colleen looked toward Beth. Beth studied the remains of her cheesecake. The 2 church women suddenly became very interested in their coffee. Victor gave a low chuckle. Don't be childish. The deposit card will cover it. The waiter hesitated. Sir, we tried the card on file. Dad's smile held. Try it again. The manager already did. The waiter lowered his voice. The bank declined it twice. Paige turned toward me so quickly, her bracelet struck her wine glass. What did you do? Nothing to your card, I said. It wasn't her card. The restaurant manager had approached from behind the waiter. She carried a printed receipt and spoke with the careful calm of someone who knew the table was about to become a problem. The card holder is Diane Monroe. Mom tapped the table 3 times. Then she pointed to herself and shook her head. Victor's chair scraped backward. My wife is not capable of managing that account. The room went quiet enough for me to hear dishes knocking together behind the kitchen door. The manager placed the itemized receipt beside the bill. We can't see the bank's reason for declining it. The reservation is listed as a caregiver appreciation dinner, and the cardholder's name is Diane Monroe. Dad looked at Mom, not me. For one bare second, the concern vanished from his face. What replaced it was flat and sharp, the expression of a man discovering that a door he owned had been locked from the other side. You called the bank? Paige demanded. Mom lifted her chin. I knew why the charge had failed. Earlier that afternoon, Diane had requested a lock on her own card. Victor had not known until that moment. Victor leaned closer to her. Diane, did Rachel tell you to do this? Mom shook her head again. She doesn't understand what you're asking, Dad told the manager. My daughter has been interfering with her care. I reached for the itemized receipt. May I keep this? The manager nodded. Yes, ma'am. Dad turned on me. You froze your mother's card and came here to humiliate us. No, I said. Mom froze her card. You humiliated yourselves on credit. Paige shoved back from the table. You've been alone with her. Not tonight. I folded the receipt and placed it in my purse. And not long enough to order a seafood tower. Aunt Colleen covered her mouth, though I could not tell whether she was hiding a laugh or a gasp. Victor snatched up the blue folder. One page slipped free and landed face up beside Mom's plate. Paige grabbed it almost immediately, but not before I saw the full line. Proposed admission date. Thursday, September 4th. The proposed move was only 11 days away. Dad jammed the page back into the folder. This is none of your concern. Mom made a strained sound beside him. Her left hand moved across the table until her fingertips found mine. 3 days earlier, in a therapy room Victor believed I knew nothing about, she had worked for nearly 10 minutes to give me only 2 words. House, Thursday. I had thought she was warning me about a meeting. Sitting beside the trash can with a $3,600 bill between us, the meaning changed. Thursday was the day my father planned to remove my mother from her own home. 3 days before my father seated me beside the trash can, I was standing in the dispatch room at work with 6 late medical rides blinking red across 2 computer screens. The phones had been ringing since lunch. One driver had called in sick, another van had overheated, and 2 dialysis patients were waiting outside in 90-degree heat. I had a headset over one ear and a route map open when my cell phone vibrated against the desk. The number belonged to North Creek Rehabilitation Clinic. I almost let it go to voicemail. Dad had spent months telling relatives that I called doctors behind his back, pressured Mom during therapy, and tried to turn every appointment into an investigation. A call from her clinic in the middle of my workday looked exactly like the kind of bait Victor would use, then photograph after I stepped into it. Still, I answered. Rachel Monroe? A woman asked. Yes, who is this? My name is Leah Chen. I'm the speech-language pathologist working with your mother. Her voice was calm without being soft. Diane asked us to contact you. We documented her consent through supported communication before I made this call. My hand stopped above the keyboard. Is she all right? I can't discuss her treatment over the phone, Leah said. She has asked to see you privately. Are you able to come to the clinic this afternoon? Across the room, my assistant was already rerouting the dialysis van. I looked at the clock, calculated what could wait, then closed the route map. I can be there in 25 minutes, I said. Traffic along Interstate 270 moved faster than it usually did at that hour. Even so, I spent the entire drive preparing for 3 different disasters. Maybe Mom had declined. Maybe Paige had disappeared and Dad needed me to cover her shifts. Maybe Victor planned to confront me in a clinic hallway where every raised voice could be recorded as proof that I upset his wife. None of those guesses prepared me for finding Mom alone. Leah met me outside a therapy room with frosted glass on the upper half of the door. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pinned at her neck and a tablet under one arm. "Before you go in," Leah said, "your mother chose who she wanted present. That's you and me. No one else has been notified. Dad doesn't know I'm here?" Diane asked that we not contact him yet. Leah held my gaze. "I need you to understand something else. She may need time." Silence does not mean she has finished answering. I nodded too quickly, because at that point I still believed patience was something other people needed when they could not keep up. Mom sat at a small table beside the window. She had lost weight since the last time I saw her, enough that the collar of her blue blouse stood away from her neck. Her right hand rested curled against a support cushion, while her left lay beside a laminated letterboard. Gray roots showed beneath the color Paige maintained for family photos. When I stepped through the door, Mom's mouth opened. "Ray," she managed. The sound broke in the middle, but it was mine. I crossed the room and bent to hug her. Mom held me with her left arm, pressing her palm between my shoulder blades for only a moment before pushing gently against me. "Not rejection. Enough." "You look tired," I said as I sat across from her. "Are they letting you sleep? Is Paige still staying overnight? Did Dad change your medication again?" Mom's fingers moved toward the letterboard. Leah pulled out the chair beside her. "Let's give her the question one at a time." I folded my hands under the table. Mom pointed first to the letter H, then O, U, S, E. Leah did not read the word aloud for her. She only slid a notepad closer. "House," I said. Mom nodded, and her finger moved again. THURSDAY. "Thursday," I said. "Something is happening at the house Thursday." Mom's jaw tightened. She pointed to N, then O. "House. Thursday." "No," I repeated. "You don't want to go home Thursday? You don't want Paige at the house? Is Dad selling it?" The last question made Mom's hand jerk against the board. "That's it, isn't it?" I leaned forward. "He's selling the house." "Is the appointment Thursday? Is that why you called me? Do you want me to stop it?" Mom pulled her hand back and pressed it flat against the table. Her breathing had shortened. The more I tried to help, the farther away the answer seemed to move. Leah spoke quietly. "Your mother is answering. You're solving." The words landed harder than they should have. "I'm trying to save her time," I said. "You're filling it." Mom looked at me, then began moving her finger across the board again. The first 3 letters took nearly half a minute. The rest took longer because her hand drifted when she tired. Let me be slow. Heat climbed the back of my neck. For months I had accused Dad of speaking over her, yet I had lasted less than 10 minutes before doing the same thing with better intentions. "I'm sorry," I said. "Take as long as you need." Mom studied my face as if deciding whether I meant it. Then she tapped 3 times beside the letterboard. "Breathe, then choose." I leaned back and waited. The room was not silent. An air conditioner hummed above the window, rubber soles squeaked in the hallway, and a patient nearby practiced the same vowel repeatedly. Mom's finger hovered, dropped, corrected itself. I kept my mouth closed. She pointed to a photograph Leah had placed among several picture cards. It showed the red brick colonial in Westerville where Paige and I had grown up. The house had belonged to Mom's father before he died, and he had left it to her, not to Dad, because Granddad trusted paperwork more than promises. Next, Mom pointed to a calendar. Leah turned it toward me. A blue circle surrounded Thursday, September 4th. "That's 2 weeks from today," I said, then stopped before turning the statement into another guess. Mom nodded and pointed to a glossy brochure beside the calendar. "Maple Glen Memory Care." The cover showed a white-haired couple smiling beneath maple trees. I looked at Mom. "Do you want to move there?" She pointed to no. "Do you want to sell the house?" I asked. Mom selected no again. "Do you want Dad to make those decisions for you?" Mom's finger struck the word so firmly the board shifted. I breathed through the next question before asking it. "Do you want me to make those decisions for you?" Her hand rested for a moment. Then she pointed to no. The answer pinched, though it should not have. I had arrived ready to take charge, sorting through locks, accounts, and spare bedrooms in my head. Mom was not asking me to replace Victor. She was asking for a way out of a room where everyone kept replacing her. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. This time she used the tablet. Leah positioned it near Mom's left hand, then turned off word prediction so the software would not place ideas in front of her. Mom typed slowly, pausing between letters. "Own lawyer." I glanced at Leah. "Can she hire one herself?" I asked. "That is a legal question," Leah said. "But your mother can communicate that she wants independent advice. Capacity is not determined by how fast someone speaks." Mom tapped the screen until another sentence appeared. "Not Victor lawyer." "I understand," I said. "Your lawyer, not Dad's, not mine." Mom's shoulders lowered a fraction. Leah brought out a printed list prepared by the clinic's social worker. It contained 3 local elder law attorneys, with office locations and phone numbers. But no recommendations. Mom read each one. She took her time, then placed her finger beside Marisol Grant. While Leah documented the choice, I noticed a folded bank envelope tucked under the Maple Glen brochure. Mom pushed it toward me. Inside was a card bearing her name and a printed page showing several recent charges. The restaurant deposit sat near the top. "Is this why Paige invited me Sunday?" I asked. Mom pointed to the deposit, then to the word lock written on a blank sheet. "You want the card locked?" I asked. Mom selected yes. "We can call the bank now," I said. "I'll explain what's happening." Mom shook her head. Leah moved the speakerphone closer. "Diane will make the request. I can support communication, but I cannot act as the customer. And neither can you." The bank call took almost 40 minutes. The accessibility specialist asked Mom to confirm her identity and the last 4 digits of the card. Leah read each question once, then waited. When Mom needed the letterboard, the specialist allowed time without prompting her toward an answer. At one point I reached for the phone because the pause stretched so long that I thought the call had dropped. Mom caught my wrist with her left hand and tapped 3 times. I put my hand back in my lap. The card was locked at Diane Monroe's request. The specialist gave her a confirmation number and required added verification before anyone could remove the restriction. Dad would learn about it when the restaurant tried to run the deposit card on Sunday. Mom knew that. The smallest smile touched one side of her mouth. "You planned that," I said. She lifted her chin. For the first time since the stroke, I saw more than what had happened to my mother. Victor believed every delayed word belonged to him until she could finish it. Mom had begun using that belief against him. "We don't have to wait until Sunday," I said. "I can take you to my condo tonight. You can use the 2nd bedroom, and we'll sort everything out from there." Mom shook her head before I finished. "You said you don't want to go home." She pointed to the house photograph, then the Maple Glen brochure, then the word evidence. Leah folded her arms loosely. "She has been consistent about wanting a safe plan before changing locations. What if Dad moves her before then?" Mom typed again. "He thinks I agree." I looked from the screen to her face. "And you want him to keep thinking that?" Mom selected yes. The strategy made sense, which was exactly why it frightened me. Dad controlled the house, the shared phone plan, most of the mail, and everyone's access to Mom. If he learned too soon, he could change the schedule, remove the tablet, or move her before we understood his authority. I called Marisol Grant's office from the hallway. Her assistant first offered an appointment the following week. I explained that the prospective client had expressive aphasia and believed a property transfer and residential move were being arranged against her wishes, so she placed me on hold. Marisol joined us by secure video late that afternoon. She wore a navy jacket and paused before every important sentence. "Mrs. Monroe," Marisol said, addressing my mother. "I need to be clear about who my client would be. If you hire me, I represent you. I do not represent Rachel, even if she helps with communication or transportation." Mom selected yes. "Do you want Rachel present for this consultation?" Marisol asked. Mom selected yes. "Do you want her to make legal decisions for you?" Mom selected no. Marisol glanced at me through the screen. "That distinction matters." "I know," I said, though I had only learned it an hour earlier. The consultation stayed practical. Marisol did not promise to stop everything by dinner. She explained that Diane's ability had to be evaluated for each decision. including where she lived, whether the house was sold, and whether Victor could keep acting under an old financial power of attorney. A nod or a shake of the head may be meaningful, Marisol said. But we need a careful record showing that Diane understands the options and the likely consequences. Mom pointed to yes, then pushed the house photograph closer to the camera. With Diane's permission, Marisol's assistant checked the county property record and contacted the title company named on an email Diane still had access to. The house had already been listed through Victor's authority under the old power of attorney. A closing file was open. The proposed closing date was 16 days away. 16 days to document Mom's wishes, examine Victor's authority, stop the transfer, and trace the money. 16 days while Dad still controlled the place where she slept. By the end of the call, Mom's hand trembled from the effort of using the board. Leah suggested stopping, but Diane typed one final sentence before allowing the tablet to be taken away. "Do not tell Victor yet." I read it twice. Sunday's dinner was no longer an insult I had been invited to endure. It was the only chance I would have to watch Victor and Paige together, while they still believed my mother had no way to oppose them. By the time the restaurant manager stepped away from our table, my father had stopped pretending the evening was about gratitude. A full minute passed before Victor reached inside his jacket and pulled out a black credit card. He placed it on the leather bill folder with 2 fingers, as if even touching the check offended him. The manager took it without comment, while Paige stared at me across the table and Mom kept her left hand wrapped around mine. "You embarrassed your mother," Dad said. The words came quietly because quiet accusations travel farther in a crowded room. Aunt Colleen heard him. So did the 2 women from Mom's church, who had already watched my father's devotion turn into anger the moment Diane's card stopped working. "No," I said. Her card declined a charge she didn't approve. "You locked it," Paige leaned forward, and the diamonds in her bracelet clicked against her wineglass. "You waited until tonight because you wanted an audience." Mom shook her head. Victor did not look at her. Instead, he pulled the blue folder against his plate and opened it. "Since you insist on making everything difficult, we might as well settle this now." The first page carried the title, Family Care Acknowledgement. My name was typed beneath it, along with a blank signature line and the date of the dinner. Dad slid the folder across the table with the pen from his jacket pocket. "Sign it," he said. "Then we can all go home." I did not touch the pen. "What am I acknowledging?" "That page is handling your mother's daily needs because you are unable to participate." Victor's voice softened again for the witnesses. "No one is blaming you for having a demanding job, Rachel. We're simply putting the truth on paper." The second paragraph said I was unable or unwilling to provide regular caregiving. The third named Paige as the primary family caregiver. Another section claimed the family had discussed residential placement and agreed that Maple Glen Memory Care was the safest option for Diane. It was not a deed, a power of attorney, or a transfer of property. Signing it would not have handed Victor the house. It would have handed him something he valued almost as much, a clean story with my name beneath it. If I objected later, he could say I had already admitted I would not help. If Mom resisted the move, he could say the family had reached a decision after considering everyone's concerns. The page turned a boundary into abandonment and a private plan into family consensus. Paige nudged the pen toward me. "If you care about Mom, this should be easy." "That sentence doesn't make sense," I said. "You know exactly what I mean." "I do. That's why I'm reading before I sign." Victor's jaw shifted. He had spent my childhood putting papers in front of me after decisions were already made, permission slips, loan forms. A tax return when I was 19 because he said claiming me as a dependent was easier for everyone. The trick was always the same. He called the signature a formality, then treated it as consent. I turned to the next page. The date at the top was August 18th, 6 days before the dinner and 3 days before Leah called me. Someone had drafted the document before Paige invited me. The Maple Glen admission date matched the brochure I had seen earlier, Thursday, September 4th. At the bottom, in smaller print, the document said Diane's placement was expected to begin before the pending sale of her residence was finalized. My phone was already on the table beside my water glass. I opened the camera and photographed the first page. "What are you doing?" Paige asked. Keeping a copy. Dad reached for the folder, but I placed my palm over the page. You want my signature. I get to read what I'm signing. You do not have permission to photograph private family documents, Victor said. My name is on every page. I photographed the date, the paragraph naming page, the section about Maple Glen, and both signature lines. The images uploaded as I took them. A small cloud symbol appeared in the corner of the screen. Paige stood and grabbed for my phone. I pulled it against my chest before her fingers reached it. Sit down, I said. The files are already backed up. For once, my sister listened. Her chair struck the carpet hard enough to shake the table when she dropped back into it. Dad looked toward the churchwomen, then lowered his voice. This is exactly why your mother cannot tolerate having you involved. You turn every conversation into evidence. Mom pushed the folder with the side of her left hand. It moved several inches toward me before Victor caught her wrist. You're tired, Diane. His thumb pressed against her pulse. Let me handle this. Her mouth opened, but the sound snagged before it became a word. I set my phone down and looked directly at her. Mom, do you want me to put my name on these pages? Victor answered first. She doesn't understand what you're asking. I kept my eyes on Diane. Do you want me to sign? Mom shook her head once, stopped, then shook it again with enough force to move the loose hair beside her cheek. That was an answer, I said. It was confusion, Dad replied. You upset her, and now she is reacting to your tone. Mom's fingers found the edge of the folder and shoved it harder. The pages slid into my lap. Paige caught her wineglass before it tipped. Mom, stop, you're making a scene. The sentence hung there, wrong in a way everyone at the table could hear. Diane had made no scene. She had moved a folder. My father had restrained her, my sister had corrected her, and both of them expected the rest of us to call that care. The manager returned with Victor's receipt. Dad signed it with short, hard strokes, then pushed the bill away without looking at the total. I raised my hand slightly. Could I have an itemized copy, please? The manager looked at Victor, then back at me. Yes, ma'am. I can print another one. That has nothing to do with Mom's care, Paige said. It was charged as a caregiver appreciation dinner to Mom's card, I replied. It has everything to do with how her money is being used. Victor held out his hand. Delete those photographs. No. I returned the unsigned pages to the folder. I'm not signing this, I'm not paying the bill, and I'm not discussing Mom's care plan through you anymore. His expression sharpened. Through whom exactly? Her attorney. Dad gave a small laugh. Diane does not have an attorney. She does now. Mom's fingers tightened around mine. Victor looked at her then, really looked, and the silence between them changed. Until that moment, he had believed the locked card was something I had done to Diane. An independent lawyer meant Diane had done something without him. The manager brought the itemized receipt in a plain white envelope. I placed it in my purse, stood, and bent close enough for Mom to hear me without anyone else translating. I'll call the clinic tomorrow, I said. You don't have to answer me now. She tapped 3 times against the back of my hand. I left before Victor could build another audience around my refusal. The drive from Westerville to my condo in Worthington took 22 minutes. I used every one of them to replay the document in my head, especially the phrases that sounded harmless until they were placed together. Unable to participate, primary caregiver, family agreement, safest option. At home, I uploaded the photographs, the itemized receipt, and the images I had taken earlier in the evening to the secure portal Marisol's office had created for Diane's matter. Then I saved duplicate copies of the files outside my phone. Monday morning, my family's group text began before 6:30. Victor wrote that I had interfered with Diane's bank account, humiliated 2 exhausted caregivers, refused to contribute to dinner, and walked away from a reasonable family care agreement. Paige added a 20-second video. It showed the waiter placing the bill in front of me, my hand sliding it toward Dad, and my chair scraping back when I stood. The clip did not show Mom shaking her head. It did not show Victor gripping her wrist or the folder landing in my lap. It ended before the manager said the frozen card belonged to Diane. Aunt Colleen messaged me separately. Did you really freeze your mother's card just to embarrass Victor? She asked. I took screenshots before answering. No. Mom placed the restriction herself. I will not discuss her wishes in a family group text. Colleen's typing bubble appeared, vanished, then returned. Victor says Diane can't make financial decisions right now. Victor is not the person who gets to decide that, I wrote. She did not answer again. Marisol called shortly after 9. I closed my office door in Dublin and opened the documents on my monitor while she reviewed the copies from her end. The acknowledgement does not give Victor new legal authority, she said, but it helps him construct a record. He wants third parties to believe the family discussed the move. Paige became the caregiver by necessity, and you declined to participate. That's why he wanted relatives at dinner. Yes, and why he wanted your signature in front of them. Paper shifted near Marisol's phone. There is something else. The move to Maple Glen is scheduled before the current closing window, and the care plan says the residence will be vacant when the sale is finalized. I opened the final photograph and enlarged the bottom paragraph. The move was set 5 business days before the working closing date. How was the deposit paid? I asked. From an account in Diane's name. Maple Glen confirmed it is listed as non-refundable, though that does not settle whether Victor had authority to spend it for a placement she rejected. My fingertips pressed into the edge of the desk. He used her money to reserve a room she said she didn't want. That appears to be what happened. We still need records, and we need evidence that Victor knew her wishes. Marisol paused. Rachel, the title company says Victor is signing under a durable financial power of attorney. Did Diane ever revoke it? The old document came back to me then. Mom had signed it years earlier before surgery, at the kitchen table, while Victor joked that marriage should have made the paperwork unnecessary. I had witnessed one page because Dad said the notary needed another adult in the room. I don't know, I said. I don't think she did. Then we need to find the original language immediately, Marisol replied. A power of attorney does not let him ignore his duties or act against Diane's interests, but it may let him keep moving documents while we challenge him. If he knows scrutiny is coming, he may accelerate everything. The family care acknowledgement had not been the weapon. It was the cover Victor meant to hold up while he used authority my mother had handed him years earlier, back when she still believed he would protect her if she could not speak for herself. After Marisol ended the call, I started building a timeline of the 6 months since Mom's stroke. I approached it the same way I handled a failed medical transport route. Not by beginning with what everyone claimed had happened, but with records that did not care who sounded more convincing. Call logs, text messages, calendar entries, gas receipts from the afternoons I had driven to Westerville, emails from the clinic before Victor removed me from the contact list. At first, Dad had said Mom needed rest. During the first 2 weeks after she came home, every request to visit received some version of the same answer. Not today, Victor would say. She had a difficult morning. Then the reason changed. Mom became overstimulated around too many people. Paige needed a predictable schedule. The doctor supposedly wanted fewer visitors. By the end of the 2nd month, Dad had changed the code to the front door and told me all visits had to be approved through him. My spreadsheet filled 1 row at a time. On June 3rd, Victor canceled a lunch I had planned with Mom because Paige said she was sleeping. At 1:47 that afternoon, Paige posted a photograph of the 2 of them at a garden center. On June 22nd, Dad told me Mom could no longer use her phone. That evening, Aunt Colleen received a text from Mom's number, thanking her for a casserole in language that sounded exactly like Victor. The ugliest entry came from July 9th. I had driven to the house after Paige ignored 4 calls about a therapy appointment. Dad met me on the porch and blocked the doorway with his body. My voice rose when he refused to let me see Mom, and Paige recorded the last minute of the argument through the front window. Her video began with me saying, "You don't get to keep her from me." It did not include Dad telling me Mom no longer wanted visits. The recording did not show the shape of her blue blouse behind him in the hallway, or her left hand lifting before Paige pulled the curtain closed. Victor had saved that clip for later. By Monday afternoon, he added another piece to the story he was sending around the family, a screenshot of a message I had written 3 days before Mom's stroke. I had sent it at 11:16 on a Tuesday night after working 13 hours and listening to my parents argue over the phone for 40 minutes. "Mom, I can't keep dropping everything every time you and Dad fight. You need to decide what you actually want." Dad cropped the screenshot after the first sentence. Underneath it, he wrote, Rachel made her position clear before Diane became ill. We respected her wish to step away, but now she is interfering because property is involved. I stared at the full message on my phone until the screen dimmed. The missing sentence helped me, but it did not make the exchange something I was proud of. Mom had tried twice that week to tell me things at home were getting worse. I had heard another familiar argument and treated it like a problem she refused to solve. What I should have asked was simple. Was she safe? I had not asked. That failure belonged to me. Victor's choices did not. Marisol made the distinction when I forwarded her the full thread. Do not erase your own mistake, she told me over the phone, and do not let him expand it into consent for everything that followed. Both errors can exist at the same time. On Tuesday morning, Diane underwent the first independent assessment of her ability to make specific decisions. The evaluator was a neuropsychologist who had not treated Mom before and had no relationship with our family. From the clinic hallway, I heard Victor object to being excluded from the room. I'm her husband, Dad told Marisol. I know how she communicates. That is precisely why this portion must be conducted without you, Marisol replied. Paige stood beside him with her arms folded. This is cruel. Mom panics around strangers. She requested the assessment, Marisol said, and no one will supply answers for her. I waited in a conference room down the hall with Leah. Through the wall, I could hear a cart rolling past and the low murmur of voices, but not the questions being asked. My knee bounced beneath the table until Leah placed a paper cup of water in front of me. Whatever the result is, she said, it won't declare Diane capable or incapable of every decision in her life. I know, I replied. You keep saying that before I finish. The correction was gentle. It still found its mark. The assessment lasted almost 2 hours because Mom needed breaks. The evaluator used spoken questions, written choices, photographs, and the letterboard. She asked Diane to explain where she was living, what Maple Glen was, what could happen if the house was sold, and who currently had authority over her finances. When an answer took time, no one rushed to rescue it. Marisol called me later that afternoon with the preliminary findings. Diane demonstrated that she understands the choices about her current residence and who she wants advising her, she said. She consistently rejected Maple Glen and requested independent legal counsel. The evaluator wants more testing before giving an opinion about complex borrowing or real estate documents. My shoulders dropped for the first time since Sunday. So we can stop the sale. We can use this to support emergency action, Marisol replied. That is not the same as promising the final result. I was already opening my calendar. I can move Mom into my condo tonight. I'll take leave through the hearing, arrange home care, transfer her prescriptions, and call the bank about revoking the power of attorney. Rachel, Marisol said. Ask your mother. I visited the clinic that evening with a yellow legal pad full of tasks. Mom was seated near the window, working through a naming exercise with Leah. I waited until they finished, then placed my list on the table. The assessment supports you, I said. We can move quickly now. You can stay with me until we find something permanent. I've already checked my building's elevator measurements, and I can have the bathroom fitted with rails. Mom looked at the page, then at me. Her left index finger moved across the tablet. You are doing it again. I'm giving you options. Mom typed another sentence. You pick them. The words tightened something behind my ribs. I am trying to get you away from Dad before he sells your house and moves you into a facility you rejected. Her finger paused, then continued. Help is not the same as decide. I know that. Mom held my gaze. The legal pad sat between us with my handwriting covering both sides. I had chosen where she would sleep, how long I would take leave, which modifications my home needed, and what calls would be made. The only blank space was the one where her answer should have gone. I closed the pad. What do you want to happen first? I asked. Mom selected lawyer, then home, then bank. She did not choose my condo. Do you want to stay at the house for now? Yes. The answer frightened me, and Mom saw it. Safe plan, she typed, not rush. I wanted to argue that staying under Victor's roof could not be safe. Instead, I asked what would make it safer. Diane chose private time with the evaluator, access to her communication device, copies of her financial records, and a way to contact Marisol without Victor's permission. We wrote the requests down in her order, not mine. Paige's caregiver post appeared Wednesday morning. The photograph showed her asleep in a chair beside Mom's bed, one hand resting near the blanket. Her caption described missed work, unpaid labor, and the loneliness of caring for a parent while a sibling showed up with accusations instead of help. She did not use my name. She did not have to. The comments arrived quickly. Friends praised her sacrifice. A woman from church wrote that God saw who stayed. Aunt Colleen added a heart beneath the post. Then Paige emailed me 6 months of caregiver invoices. If you want to audit everyone, she wrote, start with what I gave up. The invoices listed bathing, meal preparation, medication reminders, transportation, overnight supervision, and therapy support. Some of those hours were probably real. Paige had done work I had not done, and pretending otherwise would have made me as dishonest as Victor. Still, several entries did not fit. On July 14th, Paige billed 8 hours of transportation and therapy support. The clinic schedule Diane had authorized for release showed the appointment had been canceled. On July 28th, she claimed overnight supervision while her own social media placed her at a concert in Cincinnati. Other entries overlapped hours already assigned to a paid home health aide. Careless records were possible. So was something worse. I sent the invoices to Marisol without calling Paige a thief. Note the discrepancies, Marisol told me. Do not decide what they prove before we have the source records. My tongue pressed against the back of my teeth. She was right, which did not make patience any easier. That afternoon, Leah arranged a secure video call with Mom and Marisol. Diane had requested that I attend, but she made me sit to her side rather than directly in front of the tablet. Beside her lay several pages from a bank statement Victor had left inside the blue folder. Mom pushed one page toward the camera and circled a transaction with her finger. The statement showed an advance of $285,000 against a home equity line secured by her house. Within days, the money had moved into an investment account controlled by Victor. When did this happen? Marisol asked. Mom pointed to the date. 7 weeks before her stroke. Did you know about the loan when it was opened? Mom selected no. Did you learn about it before your stroke? Yes. Her hand trembled, so Leah offered a break. Mom refused. She opened the communication screen and typed 3 words, stopping several times to correct the letters. Before stroke. Loan. Then she pointed to a photograph of Victor, the house, and a copy of her signature on the statement. Marisol's voice remained level. Diane, are you saying you questioned this signature before your stroke? Yes. Did you keep any documents relating to it? Mom closed her eyes for several seconds. When she opened them, she entered 2 more words. Storage key. Where is the key? I asked. Mom looked at me, then typed the name neither of us wanted to see. Paiga. My sister was accusing me in public of circling our mother's house for money. At the same time, she might be holding the key to the place where Diane had hidden proof that Victor's plan began before the stroke gave him control of her voice. Paige had the key, but Diane still had to decide whether I was allowed to use it. That distinction mattered more than I wanted it to. My first instinct was to call my sister, demand the storage address, and threaten legal action if she refused. Instead, Marisol arranged another supported video call with Mom on Thursday morning. Diane sat beside Leah with the communication tablet angled toward her left hand. Marisol asked each question slowly, leaving enough space between them for Mom to answer without anyone helping her toward the response. Do you want Rachel to ask Paige about the storage key? Marisol asked. Mom selected yes. Do you give Rachel permission to enter the storage unit if Paige allows access? Another yes. Do you want Rachel to remove documents from the unit? Mom's finger rested over the screen before she selected no. Marisol nodded. We can photograph and preserve what is there, but we will not remove anything unless you authorize it or there is a legal reason to protect the original. Mom pointed to yes again. I had already opened my mouth to ask what we were looking for when Diane touched the tablet. Loan papers. Her finger paused before adding, my papers, not our family's papers, not Dad's papers, hers. By noon, Marisol had assembled records from the Franklin County Recorder, the bank documents Diane had authorized, and the title company's preliminary closing file. She invited me to her office in downtown Columbus, but warned me before I arrived that the records would answer fewer questions than I expected. Her office overlooked Broad Street. where buses hissed at the curb and a construction crew hammered steel somewhere below. Marisol had spread the documents across a conference table in 4 separate stacks. "This is the deed," she said, placing her finger on the first page. Diane inherited the property from her father. The title remained in her name alone. So Victor never owned the house. He may have marital interests that need to be addressed during a divorce, but he is not the titled owner. Marisol slid the next stack closer. "This is the home equity line Diane opened 6 years ago. The original line had paid for a new roof, plumbing repairs, and a wheelchair-accessible bathroom for my grandfather during the last year of his life. The limit had been $90,000. Mom had kept every contractor invoice, and the balance had dropped below $30,000 before the new documents appeared. 7 weeks before her stroke, the limit increased to $450,000. The increase form carried Diane's name and a signature that looked almost like hers. Almost. Mom normally made the capital D in Diane with a narrow loop. The signature on the increase form had a round first stroke and a long tail beneath Monroe. Anyone who had seen her sign birthday cards for 30 years would notice it. That did not make my opinion evidence. "That isn't her signature," I said. Marisol did not agree or disagree. "It may not be. We need the original document, the application file, the notary record, and information about how the signing took place. It looks nothing like the deed. Different pens, surfaces, illness, fatigue, and signing conditions can change handwriting." She tapped the document. "A visual difference gives us a reason to investigate. It does not finish the investigation." I pressed my lips together. "You have a way of making every answer sound temporary. Temporary answers keep clients from building permanent decisions on guesses." The sentence irritated me because it was the same lesson Mom had been trying to teach me since the clinic. I wanted the page to be forged because that would make the next step clean. Victor had forged it, Victor had stolen the money, and someone with a badge would remove him from the story. The records were not that kind. The bank had approved the increase using documents that appeared complete. A notary stamp sat beneath the signature. The file listed a home renovation purpose, though no matching permits or contractor payments appeared after the funds were released. 3 days later, $285,000 moved from the equity line into an investment account controlled by Victor. "What investment?" I asked. "A private real estate partnership," Marisol said. "We have the name, but not the underlying records yet. Did Mom own any part of it?" "Nothing we have shows that she did." The second group of transfers happened after the stroke, when Dad began using the durable power of attorney. $58,000 went to the business account for Page Monroe events. $18,500 paid the deposit at Maple Glen. Another $14,000 covered painting, landscaping, furniture rental, and photography to prepare the house for sale. The staging invoice was dated 3 days before Dad told me Mom might remain at home permanently. I ran my finger down the statement. He was preparing the house while telling everyone he was protecting her routine. According to the dates, yes. And he paid Page's company debt. The transfer went to her business account. We do not yet know how the money was described or what Victor told Diane, Page, or the bank. I looked at Marisol. What innocent explanation covers all of this? My job is not to invent one. It is to make sure we can prove the explanation we eventually present. She pulled out the title company estimate. The house had been listed for $539,000. After the equity balance, estimated commissions, taxes, closing costs, and the projected payoff of a smaller repair lien, less than $90,000 would remain. Dad had been telling Paige for months that the house would compensate her for caring for Mom. He had promised her an inheritance from an asset that had already been hollowed out. Marisol turned another page. The transfer to Page's business matters, but the largest benefit appears to have gone to Victor's investment. If he used Diane's authority for his own benefit, he may owe an accounting and restitution. Whether the conduct is criminal depends on facts we do not have yet. He knew the house was Mom's. That alone is not enough. Spouses move money for each other every day. The important questions are whether Diane consented, whether Victor disclosed the transactions, what the power of attorney allowed, and whether he acted in her interest. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the closing estimate. All week, relatives had accused me of returning for the property. the truth was almost funny. There might be little property left to fight over by the time Victor finished paying himself Paige, Maple Glen, and the people hired to make the house attractive to strangers. The house had never been the reward. It was the last place where Mom still believed her answer should matter. Marisol found the storage payment in a statement from Diane's individual checking account. A monthly charge of $112 had gone to Northgate Storage in Westerville for almost 5 months, beginning before her stroke. The most recent payment had been made automatically 2 days earlier. "Do you recognize the name?" Marisol asked. "No, but Colleen might. Mom's sister had helped clear my grandfather's belongings after he died. If Diane rented storage for old family papers, Aunt Colleen could have known. I called her from the parking garage. Colleen answered on the 4th ring. "Rachel, I'm not getting in the middle of another fight. I'm asking about one business name, Northgate Storage." Silence came through the line, followed by the faint clink of a spoon against a mug. "Why would you ask me about that?" she said. The question was too quick. She had recognized it. Mom has been paying for a unit there. I wouldn't know anything about Diane's storage. You just asked why I mentioned that specific place. Because your father says you are digging through every account they have. The account is Mom's, and she authorized the review. Colleen sighed. Your mother would never want this. She hated strangers knowing family business. She hired her own lawyer. She is recovering from a stroke. That does not answer my question. Another pause stretched between us. Traffic moved down the garage ramp behind me, tires squealing against concrete. Diane stored some of your grandfather's things years ago, Colleen said at last. That is probably all it is. This unit was rented 5 months ago. I don't keep her calendar. Did Mom ever tell you she planned to leave Dad? The spoon stopped. No, Colleen said. She complained. Married people complain. Did she ask to stay with you? Absolutely not. Her answer came with none of the hesitation from before, but the certainty sounded rehearsed. Colleen had spent her life smoothing sharp family truths until no one could identify who had been cut. She was not leaving Victor, my aunt continued. You have always judged him more harshly than anyone else. Now you are using her illness to prove you were right. Mom said she does not want the house sold. Victor has cared for her every day. Have you considered that he might know what she needs? I have considered it, Mom answered for herself. Colleen lowered her voice. Rachel, be careful. Your father says you are trying to take control of the property. What did he tell you about Northgate Storage? The line went dead. I checked the screen. Colleen had not lost service. She had ended the call. When I visited Mom at the clinic that afternoon, I brought copies of the deed, the old repair invoices, and the closing estimate. Leah placed them on a stand so Diane could see without bending over the table. A photograph of the house sat on top. Red brick. White shutters. The maple tree Granddad had planted the year Paige was born. I had spent half my childhood on the low branch above the driveway, reading books while Mom weeded the flower bed below. This is still your house, I said. The deed is only in your name. Mom studied the photograph. The equity line has taken most of its value, I continued. But Marisol thinks the sale can be challenged. If we stop it, you can keep the house. Diane's left hand moved toward the tablet. I kept talking. We can hire home care, replace the locks, and get Victor out if the court grants temporary orders. The downstairs bathroom is already accessible, and the clinic is less than 15 minutes away. Mom tapped the screen with more force than necessary. Not house. The words stopped me. You don't want to keep it? Her finger moved again. Choice. I looked at the photograph, then at her. You are not fighting for the building, I said carefully. You are fighting because he made the decision without you. Yes. Even if you decide to sell it later? Yes. The house held Granddad's desk, pencil marks from our childhood heights, and a dent in the pantry door from the year Paige tried to roller skate through the kitchen. I had treated those memories like another argument against selling. Mom was not asking me to save a museum. She wanted the right to choose whether the door stayed open. I understand, I said. Diane's eyebrow lifted. The expression would have made me laugh under different circumstances. Mom did not believe me merely because I said the words. I am trying to understand, I corrected. Her shoulders relaxed. I showed her the transfer to Paige's business and asked whether she had approved it. Mom selected no. When I asked whether she knew Dad had promised Paige the house, Her face changed before her finger reached the screen. Yes. Did you agree to give it to her? No. Did Paige know about the equity line? Mom's hand hovered. You don't know. It was one of the most useful answers she had given me. Not because it solved anything, but because she refused to fill a gap with a guess. When we finished, Leah walked me to the reception area. Your mother worked hard today, she said. I know. Leah glanced sideways at me. I corrected myself before she could. I saw how hard she worked. That is better. My phone buzzed before I reached the elevator. A new message had appeared in the family group. Victor had written a long update about Mom's finances. He said Paige had managed household expenses and caregiver reimbursements because he had been focused on Diane's physical recovery. Any errors, he explained, would need to be reviewed with Paige because she controlled the cards, invoices, and business payments. Paige replied less than a minute later. What are you talking about? You approved everything. Victor did not answer her. Aunt Colleen left the conversation. By 6 that evening, Dad's message had reached people outside the group. One of Paige's former clients commented beneath her caregiver post, asking whether she had used family funds to cover business debts. Paige deleted the question, then removed the entire post. At 7:40, an image arrived from her number. A brass key lay across her palm. A white plastic tag hung from the ring with Northgate and a unit number printed in black. Her message followed. Dad lied to me too. I read the sentence twice before answering. Mom authorized me to document what is in the unit. I will not go in without her permission or yours. Paige's typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then returned. Tomorrow morning, 8:30, come alone. Marisol knows where I'll be, I wrote. I assumed she would. The following morning, Northgate Storage sat beneath a gray sky beside a strip of warehouses east of Interstate 270. The air smelled of wet pavement and diesel from a delivery truck idling near the gate. Paige waited inside the second building, wearing jeans, a black sweater, and no makeup. The brass key hung from one finger. Behind her, rows of orange doors ran beneath fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. You told me to come alone, I said. You did not tell me why. I needed to know whether Dad was following you. Was he? I don't think so. That is not an answer I trust. Paige gave a tired laugh without humor. You don't trust anything I say. You posted a video that made me look like I froze Mom's card for revenge. And you sent my invoices to a lawyer. They contain charges from Mom's account. My account is overdrawn. My clients think I stole from a disabled woman, and Dad is telling everyone I handled the finances alone. You did handle some of them. Her face tightened. That does not mean I invented the whole thing. I did not say it did. Paige turned toward the storage unit but did not place the key in the lock. Her hand shook once before she closed it around the metal. Dad told me the house would be mine, she said. He said Mom wanted me compensated because I stayed. He never told me about the equity line. The closing estimate leaves less than $90,000. She stared at the orange door. He promised me a paid-off house. What did you sign, Paige? The key pressed into her palm. Before I show you what Mom hid, she said. You need to know Dad already has a story ready for why all that money has my name on it. Paige turned the brass key once, but the lock did not move. She wiped her palm against her jeans, tried again, and the cylinder released with a heavy click. The orange door rattled upward along its metal tracks, sending a dry scrape through the storage building. Dust stirred beneath the fluorescent lights, carrying the smell of old fabric, cardboard, and the cedar blocks Mom used in every closet she had ever owned. Before either of us stepped inside, I opened the camera on my phone. What are you doing? Paige asked. Recording how we found it. I aimed at the unit number, the lock, and the unopened stacks of boxes. Mom authorized us to document what is here. We photograph before we move anything, and we do not remove originals. Paige rolled her eyes, though there was no energy behind it. You really do turn everything into a procedure. Procedures are useful when people start changing their stories. That ended the conversation for several seconds. The unit was barely larger than a walk-in closet. Granddad's oak desk stood on one side beneath a canvas cover. 3 plastic bins were labeled Christmas, Kitchen, and Tax Records in Mom's handwriting. A stack of framed photographs leaned against the back wall, each one wrapped in an old bath towel. Nothing looked secret until I saw the suitcase. It sat behind the desk, packed upright with a gray cardigan trapped beneath one zipper. A pair of walking shoes had been placed on top beside a canvas tote. The luggage tag carried Mom's name, phone number, and Aunt Colleen's address. Paige followed my gaze. I didn't know that was here. You had the key. I found it in Mom's purse after the stroke. Dad told me to keep it because he thought the unit held Grandpa's things. Did he ever come here? Not with me. I filmed the suitcase from every side before touching the handle. The zipper opened without resistance. Inside, Mom had packed 4 blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, undergarments, a nightgown, toiletries, and a sealed pharmacy bag containing several days of medication. A yellow envelope held copies of her insurance cards, passport, birth certificate, and the deed to the house. At the bottom lay a pair of slippers wrapped around a small framed photograph of Paige and me as children. The picture had been taken in the backyard. I was 12, Paige was 5, and Mom stood behind us with one hand on each of our shoulders. Dad had been away at a golf weekend. In the photograph, none of us looked as though we were waiting for his permission to breathe. This wasn't emergency storage, I said. She was preparing to leave. Paige lowered herself onto one of the plastic bins, or she packed in case she needed to stay with Aunt Colleen after surgery. There was no surgery scheduled. You don't know everything, she told Dad. No, but the luggage tag has Colleen's address, not ours. My sister looked away. A folder rested beneath the clothing, held shut with a rubber band. I photographed it before opening it on top of the covered desk. The first page was a consultation summary from a divorce attorney in Columbus, dated 6 weeks before Mom's stroke. Diane Monroe had asked about legal separation, ownership of inherited property, responsibility for a home equity loan, and how to protect access to an individual bank account. The attorney had advised her to collect financial records and avoid confronting Victor until she had a safe place to stay. The next page was a handwritten list. When was the credit line increased? Why is my signature on the loan? Where did the money go? Did you tell Paige the house was hers? Why did you change the mailing address? Mom had added another question at the bottom, pressing hard enough to leave an imprint on the sheet beneath it. What will he do if I say no? Paige stood beside me. Her perfume could not cover the sour smell of fear breaking through her skin. Did you know she met with a divorce lawyer? I asked. No. Did you know she questioned the loan? No, Rachel. Did you know she was planning to stay with Colleen? I knew they talked. Mom complained about Dad all the time. I lifted the printed email beneath the notes. It was addressed to Aunt Colleen. I need somewhere to stay for a few weeks, Mom had written. I am not asking you to choose sides. I need time to review the house documents where Victor cannot find them. Please do not tell him yet. Colleen had replied 9 hours later. You are both under a lot of stress. Leaving will make everything worse. Talk to your husband before you do something the family cannot undo. Mom sent one more message. I am afraid he will stop me once he knows. Colleen never answered. Paige read over my shoulder, then stepped back until the plastic bin touched her legs. She lied to me, I said. Who? Colleen. She said Mom never asked to stay with her. Maybe she forgot. She ended our call the moment I asked about Northgate. That still doesn't mean she helped Dad. It means Mom asked for a door, and Colleen explained why opening it would be inconvenient. My voice had risen. The metal walls threw it back at us. Paige crossed her arms. At least Mom asked Colleen. She didn't ask you. The sentence found the place my sister intended. I turned back to the folder. A square piece of notepaper was clipped to the final page. Tell Rachel only after I am out. The handwriting was Mom's. I read it again, though the words did not change. She had planned to tell me once she was safely away from Victor, not before. Maybe she feared I would confront him. Maybe she thought I would turn her escape into a list of tasks and deadlines. Maybe the message I had sent that Tuesday night had convinced her I did not want to hear anything else. Paige watched my face. She didn't trust you either. I know what the note says. You keep acting like you were the person Mom was reaching for, but she hid this from you. She hid it from everyone who might warn Dad. She wrote Colleen. She asked Colleen for shelter. Colleen refused. And where were you? Paige asked. At your condo, 20 minutes away, deciding which family emergency deserved a place on your calendar. I set the note on the desk before my fingers bent it. Say what you want to say. My sister's chin lifted. I was there after the stroke. I cleaned her when she couldn't reach the bathroom. I washed her hair over the kitchen sink because she was terrified of the shower. I learned how thick every drink had to be, which pills could be crushed, and how to get her from the bed into the chair without pulling her shoulder. You visited, asked what the doctors said, and went home. Dad stopped giving me the appointment schedule. You could have done more. I tried to get into the house and you filmed me through the window. Because you were screaming. Because Dad was blocking the door. Paige rubbed both hands over her face. Do you know what it is like to sleep for 40 minutes at a time because you think she might choke? Do you know what it is like to cancel work again and again until clients stop calling? No, I said, I don't. The answer made her drop her hands. I continued before she could use it as a victory. You did work I did not do. Some of it was exhausting, humiliating, and unpaid. I should not have treated all of that as if Dad invented it. Paige's mouth tightened. But you also kept me out, I said. You posted half a video, told relatives I abandoned Mom, and signed invoices for hours you were not there. The fact that you cared for her does not make the other things disappear. I deserve to be paid. Then the payment should have been discussed with Mom, documented honestly, and based on work you performed. Dad said Mom wanted me compensated. Did you ask her? She could barely say her own name. That is not an answer. Paige kicked lightly at the floor, sending a curl of dust beneath the desk. You have no idea how many times I asked a question and got nothing back. Did you wait? Her eyes flashed. Do not lecture me about waiting. You were not there at 3 a.m. She was right about that. She was also avoiding the question. We found the caregiver records inside a second expanding folder. The first pages looked reasonable. 2 hours for helping Mom bathe and dress. 3 hours for transportation, exercises, and lunch. Overnight supervision during the week after discharge. Then the numbers changed. 4 hours became 8. A canceled appointment still produced a full transportation charge. Nights covered by a paid aide appeared again under Paige's name. The same pharmacy trip had been billed 3 times in 1 week. A spreadsheet near the back listed reimbursements not tied to hours at all. A down payment on Paige's sport utility vehicle had been described as accessible family transportation. Boutique charges were listed as clothing for medical appointments, though the stores did not sell anything Mom could have worn. A hotel and concert weekend in Cincinnati appeared beneath the phrase caregiver respite. I held up the page. You billed Mom for the concert. Dad told me respite was a legitimate caregiver expense. A planned respite can be. That does not mean you write it as 24-hour supervision while a paid aide is at the house. He said to spread the hours across the month. And you did. Yes, I did. Paige's voice cracked, then hardened again. Because I had no income left. He kept saying the house would make everything right later, but later didn't pay my car insurance. That vehicle was not purchased for Mom. I drove her in it. The clinic transport invoices show she used an accessible van for most appointments. Sometimes I needed groceries. Sometimes I needed to pick up medication. Was I supposed to walk? You had a car before. It was falling apart. I placed the invoice back on the folder. You can explain every purchase until each one sounds almost reasonable. The totals still came from Mom's money without her informed approval. Paige paced the narrow space between the desk and the door. Dad reviewed those invoices. Can you prove it? Her movement stopped. He told me what to write. By text? Sometimes. Do you still have the messages? She looked toward the phone in her hand. That is why you brought me here, I said. Not only because you learned about the house. You found out Victor was preparing to blame you. Paige unlocked her screen and opened an email from an address belonging to Dad's attorney. The message had arrived the previous afternoon. Miss Monroe, the paralegal had written, your father has informed counsel that you independently maintained all caregiver expense reports, reimbursement requests, and household card activity. Please confirm whether this is accurate and identify which records remain in your possession. Paige had not replied. That attorney may only know what Dad told him, I said. I know. What did Victor say when you asked? He said accuracy would protect all of us. Did he define all of us? My sister gave me a look that contained more answer than the words she did not say. She opened a shared cloud folder called Diane Care Admin. Victor had created it after Mom came home from the hospital. Paige's invoices, appointment calendars, card statements, and pharmacy receipts filled several subfolders. Victor's own financial documents were almost absent. A file named Background Notes had been modified 2 weeks before the restaurant dinner. Paige opened it. The document read like the outline of a defense no one had yet asked Victor to make. It described him as a husband consumed with his wife's physical recovery, who had trusted Paige to manage routine expenses. It said he became concerned only after discovering possible irregularities in her caregiver claims. It also referred to me as an estranged daughter who had recently developed an interest in Diane's property. At the bottom sat the first draft of an affidavit. Victor wrote that he had never directed Paige to use Diane's card for personal expenses. He had never reviewed the detailed invoices. He had no knowledge of transfers into Paige Monroe events until recent questions arose. Any misuse, the statement said, had occurred outside his awareness. The file had been created before Mom froze the restaurant card. He was ready, Paige whispered. He has been ready for a while. Another subfolder carried her name. It contained screenshots of purchases, every invoice she submitted, photographs from her social media, and copies of the card authorizations showing her email address. Victor had kept evidence against his own daughter more carefully than he kept medical records for his wife. Paige scrolled faster. He told me to use that card. Slow down. I am not slow. You are skipping dates. She stopped, swallowed, then handed me the phone. I did not take it. What? She asked. You wanted proof. I want you to send the files to Marisol's secure portal. I am not taking possession of your phone. Because you think I'll accuse you of stealing it? Because the phone belongs to you. The lawyer represents Mom, and I am not going to create another argument Victor can use. Paige lowered the device. You really think every move ahead? No, I learned what happens when I don't. We photographed the documents in the storage unit, page by page, without removing them. I sent the images to Diane's secure file, including the suitcase, the email to Colleen, the attorney consultation notes, and Mom's list of questions. Paige uploaded the draft affidavit and the email from Victor's legal team. She did not upload the full message history. There are years of texts, Paige said. Some have nothing to do with Mom. Marisol can arrange a limited review. I want an agreement first. What kind of agreement? That if I give you everything, your lawyer will not hand it to the police or use it against me. Marisol is Mom's lawyer, not mine. Then ask her. I cannot promise what Mom will choose to do with evidence about her own money. Paige stared at me. You know Dad used me. I know he planned to sacrifice you. That does not mean you did nothing. I was following what he told me. You were 31, not 13. Her eyes filled, though no tears fell. You always get to be the one with clean hands. My hands are not clean. I ignored Mom when she tried to tell me something was wrong. I stayed away longer than I should have, because every visit became a fight. But I did not take her money, Paige. You left me to do everything. I did not assign you that life. Dad did, and you agreed because he promised you the house. I believed him. That explains why you stayed. It does not erase what you signed. Paige's shoulders sagged against the storage door. So you will let me go down with him. I will not lie for you. I will also not let him place his decisions on your name if the records show otherwise. That is not protection. It is the truth. For most of our lives, Paige had believed protection meant someone powerful, promising consequences would never reach her. Victor had offered exactly that kind of safety, right up until he needed a name beneath the expenses. I looked at the suitcase behind her. Mom had packed it because she understood a promise was useless when the person making it controlled the door. Send the messages that concern Mom's money, the house, Maple Glen, and the invoices, I said. Marisol can tell you to get your own lawyer before you provide anything else. Paige gave a bitter laugh. With what money? The same way everyone else does when the situation is serious. Call legal aid. Ask for a payment plan. Sell the car if you have to. Her phone began vibrating before she could answer. Dad's name filled the screen. Paige stared at it until the call nearly ended, then pressed the speaker against her ear and walked several steps away. Victor spoke loudly enough that pieces carried through the unit. What are you doing at Northgate? Paige turned toward me. All the color left her face. "How do you know where I am?" she asked. "You are still on the family location account," Dad said. "Have you opened Diane's unit? That is none of your business. Everything involving my wife is my business. Is Rachel with you?" Paige did not answer. Victor's voice changed, dropping into the calm register he used when witnesses might be listening. "Your sister is manipulating you because she wants the house. Do not give her anything. Leave now, and we can fix this. You wrote an affidavit blaming me." A pause followed. Not surprise, calculation. "You have misunderstood a working document," Dad said. "My attorney needed an accurate description of who handled expenses. You told me what to charge. I told you to keep records. You told me to add hours. Paige, you are upset. Rachel has been pressuring everyone, including your mother. I am taking steps to protect Diane before more harm is done." "What steps?" Victor exhaled slowly. "My attorney is filing an emergency petition tomorrow morning. Rachel will no longer be permitted to contact your mother without court approval." My grip tightened around the edge of the covered desk. Paige looked at the suitcase, the loan papers, and the draft statement that had been waiting to bury her. Her voice came out smaller when she asked, "What did you tell the court?" "The truth," Dad replied. "That Rachel is exploiting a disabled woman and turning you against your own family." Paige ended the call. For several seconds, only the fluorescent lights made a sound. Then she looked at me and held out her unlocked phone. "He already has the petition ready," she said, "and if he files it tomorrow, he is going to use both of us to prove it." The emergency petition reached Marisol's inbox less than an hour after Paige ended the call with our father. We were still standing inside the storage unit when Marisol phoned me. Paige had stepped into the hallway, clutching her phone against her chest, while I remained beside Mom's packed suitcase and the divorce consultation she had hidden before her stroke. "Victor is requesting immediate authority over Diane's care and residence," Marisol said. "He is also asking the court to restrict your contact with her until a fuller hearing can be scheduled." My fingers tightened around the phone. "On what grounds?" "He alleges that you pressured Diane into freezing her credit card, interfered with her treatment, and caused emotional distress to influence decisions about the house. He invited me to dinner so he could force me to sign a statement." "I know what happened," Marisol replied. "The court does not yet." Paige moved closer when she heard the word court. "What did he attach?" I asked. "A video from July, the text you sent before the stroke, a clip from one of Diane's therapy sessions, and a signed statement from Colleen." The storage building seemed colder than it had a minute earlier. "What therapy clip?" Marisol paused. "It shows Diane crying while you are sitting across from her." I pictured the clinic room, the letterboard, and the long wait before Mom had typed that she wanted her own lawyer. She had cried after I asked whether she wanted me to make decisions for her, and she answered no. Not because I had frightened her, because someone had finally let her refuse without correcting the answer. "Where did Victor get that video?" I asked. "The petition says Paige recorded it from the hallway." I looked at my sister. Paige shook her head immediately. "I recorded part of one visit because Dad told me Mom came home upset. I did not send him anything for court." "Was the crying clip on your phone?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "That is not a difficult question," I said. "Yes," Paige admitted, "but it had more before and after." "Did Dad have access to your cloud account?" "He set it up." Marisol's voice came through the speaker. "Do not argue in the storage building. Photograph the remaining documents, close the unit, and leave separately. Paige needs independent counsel before speaking further." Paige stared at the concrete floor. "He is making it look like Rachel made Mom cry." "That is exactly what he is doing," Marisol said. "And if either of you confronts him now, he will document the confrontation." I photographed Mom's final handwritten notes, closed the folder, and returned it to the suitcase. We lowered the orange door and replaced the lock. Paige stood beside me beneath the buzzing fluorescent light, looking smaller than she had at the restaurant. "Are you going to Marisol's office?" I asked. "My father's attorney already called me twice." "That was not my question." Paige rubbed the edge of the key against her thumb. "I need time. You do not have much. Neither do you." She walked toward the exit before I could answer. Marisol's office had a copy of the petition waiting for me when I arrived. It was 37 pages long, though Victor's story could have been reduced to one sentence. Rachel Monroe had abandoned her mother, then returned when property became involved. Every exhibit had been selected to make the sentence feel true. The porch video showed me raising my voice while Dad stood between me and the doorway. The cropped text ended after I told Mom I could not keep dropping everything when she and Dad fought. The restaurant account described me refusing to pay for a caregiver dinner, freezing Diane's card, and frightening her in front of relatives. Victor never mentioned the unsigned family care document. The therapy video was 14 seconds long. Mom sat at the table crying, while I leaned toward her with one hand near the communication device. Without sound, the clip looked worse. My posture appeared forceful. Her right arm lay curled beside her, and tears moved down both cheeks while I spoke. The recording ended before Mom reached for my hand. What exactly was being said? Marisol asked. I had just asked whether she wanted me to make legal decisions for her. I kept my eyes on the frozen image. She said no. And what did you say? That I understood. Did you? Not immediately. Marisol waited. I had arrived with a plan to move her into my condo, I said. I had already measured the elevator and planned time off work. Mom told me I was choosing everything before asking her. Was she correct? Yes. The word scraped on the way out, but it belonged there. Marisol folded her hands. That admission does not establish coercion. It establishes that Diane rejected your plan, and you changed course. Victor will say I only changed after Leah corrected me. He may. We will show the full interaction if Diane authorizes its release. Then release everything. No. The answer came so quickly that I stared at her. Those are Diane's medical and therapy records, Marisol continued. They are not yours to publish in order to defend yourself. We will ask Diane what limited disclosures she permits and what the court needs. He is using a stolen fragment, and you are proposing to answer by exposing every private moment your mother had in treatment. My jaw ached from pressing my teeth together. What am I supposed to do while people believe that? I asked. Protect Diane's case instead of your reputation. The room went quiet except for traffic several floors below. Victor understood exactly which accusation would make me reckless. He had spent years calling me cold. Now he had found a way to make every attempt to disprove it look like another effort to control Mom. Marisol slid the petition's exhibits toward me. Read the full text message. I opened the original conversation on my phone. Mom had first written, "Your father has done something with the house paperwork. I cannot get a straight answer." I had replied from work, "What paperwork?" She answered, "He says I signed something months ago. I don't remember it. He keeps saying we'll talk later." Then came the phone call where she and Dad argued while I listened. After 40 minutes, I sent the message Victor had cropped. "Mom, I can't keep dropping everything every time you and Dad fight. You need to decide what you actually want." Her response had come 7 minutes later. "I want to leave. I just need to know where." I had not answered until the next morning. By then, she wrote that everything was fine. 3 days later, Mom had the stroke. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Buses crawled through the intersection below, stopping and starting beneath a red light. I should have asked whether she was safe, I said. Marisol did not tell me I had done my best. She did not soften the sentence into something easier. "Yes," she replied. "I thought it was another fight. You were allowed to set a boundary. I used the boundary to stop listening." "That is the part you own," Marisol said. "You do not own Victor's financial decisions, the isolation after the stroke, or the attempt to override Diane's current wishes." The two truths sat beside each other without canceling anything. I had failed my mother at a moment when she needed a better question. My father was using that failure to justify taking away her choices now. I could admit the first without handing him the second. Colleen's statement was worse than the video because it had been written carefully. She described Mom as a woman who had always relied on Victor for major decisions. According to Colleen, Diane became overwhelmed by conflict and frequently changed her mind after talking with Rachel. She claimed my visits caused visible agitation and that Mom had never expressed a serious desire to leave her marriage. The final paragraph said Colleen feared I was exploiting Diane's communication difficulties to settle old resentment toward my father. I read it twice, then noticed the date hidden inside the fourth paragraph. "Here," I said. "She says she called Dad on August 12th, because Mom planned to leave the house that Friday. Marisol leaned closer. What about it? I did not learn about the suitcase or the storage unit until yesterday. Mom never told me the date she planned to leave. Colleen just swore that Mom never seriously intended to leave, but she knows the exact Friday. Marisol marked the paragraph. That does not prove why she knows, but it gives us a question. It also means she talked to Dad. Possibly. She forwarded Mom's message to him. We need Colleen to say that, or another record confirming it. I picked up my phone. I'll call her. Marisol placed one hand over the device before I could dial. No. She signed a sworn statement supporting Victor. Anything you say now may become another exhibit. So I let her leave? You let me request the underlying communications. Waiting had begun to feel like standing on railroad tracks while someone explained that the train was still several miles away. By late afternoon, Marisol filed a written opposition and requested that the court preserve Diane's current placement until she could be assessed directly. No judge appeared within minutes. No order arrived before dinner. The filing entered a queue, and the clock kept moving. Victor used the delay. North Creek Clinic called me shortly after 5. The receptionist said Dad had canceled Mom's upcoming sessions with Leah and requested that her records be transferred to a provider closer to Maple Glen. Did Mom consent? I asked. I can't discuss the details, the receptionist replied. Leah asked me to tell you that Diane's legal representative has been notified. Victor is claiming to be her legal representative. I understand. Is Mom still at the clinic? The woman hesitated. Her appointment ended 20 minutes ago. I called Leah directly. She answered from her car. Victor arrived with Paige, she said. He removed Diane before we could finish today's session. Paige was there? Yes. My hand closed around the steering wheel. She stopped answering me. Rachel, listen carefully. Diane's communication device may contain local records, but our provider portal also stores session data. If content was created or modified during documented therapy, there may be a backup. Can you access it? Not by myself. We need Diane's authorization, the provider's records process, and possibly a formal request, depending on what Marisol needs. What kind of content? Leah lowered her voice. I cannot discuss specific entries without permission. I am telling you that deletion from the home device may not mean deletion from the clinical system. A second call appeared on my screen. Marisol. I have to take this, I told Leah. Marisol did not waste time with a greeting. Maple Glen sent a transfer notice. Victor changed the admission date. To when? Tomorrow morning. The original move had been planned for the following Thursday. Victor had pulled it forward by more than a week. He cannot move her while the petition is disputed. He can attempt it under the authority he claims to hold. We have sent written objections to him, Maple Glen, the transport provider, and the court. An objection is not an order. No, it is not. I am going to the house. Do not enter without a clear invitation from Diane. She may not have the device. Dad may not let her reach the door. I know. Then what do you expect me to do? Sit in my car while he takes her? I expect you to avoid giving him the confrontation described in his petition. The restraint in Marisol's voice made me want to throw the phone against the windshield. He is moving her before anyone can hear her answer. We are arranging an emergency assessment at the house. Leah is willing to attend, and the evaluator is trying to clear her morning. Maple Glen has been informed that consent is disputed. What if they arrive first? Be present. Document. Ask that Diane be given a way to communicate. Do not push past Victor. Do not touch your mother's chair. And do not threaten the transport staff. Every instruction sounded like surrender when I pictured Mom being rolled through the front door. Then I remembered the petition. Victor wanted me shouting on the porch. He wanted my hands on the wheelchair while Paige filmed. He needed an image strong enough to bury Mom's slower answer beneath my louder one. I'll stay outside, I said, unless Diane asks for you. After the call, I tried Paige again. Her phone went directly to voicemail. My messages showed delivered but unread. Did you go back to Dad? I wrote. Is Mom safe? No answer came. At 6:30, Paige's location disappeared from the family account. At 7, Dad posted a message saying Diane would be moved to a peaceful environment where she could recover without conflict. The post thanked Paige for putting her mother's needs above personal attacks. Paige reacted with a heart. I stared at the small red symbol until the screen blurred. Maybe she had gone back to him. Maybe Victor promised to withdraw the affidavit if she cooperated. Or perhaps he had threatened her with the invoices until she decided I was the more dangerous side to disappoint. I had no evidence for any of it. Only a heart beneath a lie. Sleep did not come that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the full message from Mom open beside the storage photographs. I read her line again. I want to leave. I just need to know where. 11 months later, that sentence still remains the hardest part to tell. Not because Victor found it. Because I had received it, carried the phone into my bedroom, and decided I would answer when I had more energy. At 5:40 the next morning, I parked across from my parents' house in Westerville. The sun had not cleared the roofs. Sprinklers clicked across a neighboring lawn, and the air smelled of wet grass and exhaust from a white transport van idling at the curb. Maple Glen, Senior Living, was printed along its side. They were 2 hours early. Victor opened the front door, carrying Mom's canvas tote. Paige followed with the folded wheelchair ramp, keeping her face turned away from the street. I stepped out of my car. Marisol called at the same moment. I answered without taking my eyes from the house. The evaluator is 15 minutes away, she said. Leah is coming behind her. Victor is already bringing out Mom's bag. Stay where you are. The front door opened again. Dad backed through it, pulling Mom's suitcase over the threshold. The same suitcase we had found at Northgate, the one Diane had packed to escape him. He had taken it from the storage unit. My body moved before the decision reached my head. One step off the curb, then another. Rachel, Marisol said sharply through the phone. Do not go inside unless your mother asks for you. If you cross that line, he gets the scene he filed for. Victor looked across the yard and saw me. Then he smiled and lifted his phone to record. Victor held his phone toward me from the front porch, waiting for anger to do the work his petition could not. I stopped at the edge of the driveway. The Maple Glen transport coordinator stood beside the van with a clipboard tucked against her chest. A second employee waited near the folded ramp, glancing between my father and me. Neither looked eager to move a woman whose family was arguing about whether she had agreed to go. Rachel, Dad called, keeping the camera raised. You've been told not to interfere. No order has been issued against me, I said. Please ask Mom whether she wants me inside. She already agreed to the move. Then let her say so. Victor gave the transport staff a weary smile. My daughter has been harassing us for days. My wife becomes distressed whenever Rachel appears. The coordinator shifted her clipboard. Mr. Monroe, is your wife able to communicate her consent directly? My wife has aphasia. That was not my question. The front door remained open behind him. I could hear wheels moving across the hardwood floor, followed by Paige's voice telling someone to watch the threshold. Mom appeared in the hallway. She wore a burgundy sweater over loose gray pants. Her hair had not been brushed on one side, and the canvas tote hung from the back of her wheelchair. Paige pushed her forward until Victor stepped into the doorway and blocked most of my view. Mom, I said, do you want me to come inside? Dad lowered the phone just enough to look at her. Diane, Rachel is causing another scene. We need to leave. Mom's left hand lifted from the armrest. Victor caught it and placed it back in her lap. The transport coordinator closed her clipboard. We will not load her while consent is being disputed. How? My power of attorney authorizes this placement, Dad said. It may authorize you to arrange care, she replied. It does not require our facility to accept a resident who is visibly resisting admission. Victor's practiced patience cracked at the edges. She is not resisting, she is confused. A silver sedan turned onto the street and parked behind my car. Leah stepped out first, carrying Mom's communication tablet. The independent evaluator followed with a rolling case, and Marisol emerged from the passenger side, holding a document folder. Dad's phone swung toward them. You brought an audience, he told me. No, Marisol said as she crossed the yard. Diane requested an assessment. Maple Glen has been notified that her consent is disputed, and the court has received our emergency filing. You cannot conduct an examination in my home. The evaluation can occur at the clinic, Marisol replied. However, if you intend to remove Diane before that happens, The evaluator is prepared to speak with her here. Victor glanced at the transport coordinator. No one moved toward the van. Fine, he said. I will stay with my wife. The evaluator shook her head. You may remain nearby, but you cannot answer, prompt, or stand where Diane can take cues from your expression. I know what she means when she gestures. That is precisely the concern. Paige rolled Mom back into the living room. I stayed outside until Leah came to the doorway. Diane has been asked whether she wants you present, Leah said. She indicated yes. Only then did I step across the threshold. The house smelled of coffee and the lemon furniture polish Dad used before guests arrived. Mom's suitcase stood beside the stairs. Victor had removed the luggage tag bearing Colleen's address, but the gray cardigan was still trapped beneath the zipper. The evaluator placed photographs and written choices on the coffee table. Leah positioned the tablet near Mom's left hand, then sat far enough away that Diane could reach the screen without following anyone else's movements. Victor tried to stand behind the sofa. Out of her sight, please, the evaluator said. This is humiliating. This is an assessment, not a performance. Dad moved into the dining room, where I could still hear the faint tap of his shoes against the floor. The evaluator began with simple orientation questions. Mom identified her name, the house, the month, and the people in the room. Some answers came through pictures, others through the letterboard. Nothing happened quickly. When Mom paused for almost a minute, Paige shifted beside me. She is tired, my sister said. Maybe we should stop. Leah looked at her. Diane has not asked to stop. Mom continued. The evaluator showed her a photograph of the house and a brochure for Maple Glen. She asked what would happen if Diane entered the van. Mom selected move. Would the move be temporary or permanent? The evaluator asked. Mom chose permanent. What might happen to this house after you move? Her finger traveled across the board. Sell. Do you understand that Maple Glen provides memory care and that you would not be free to leave without discharge arrangements? Yes. Do you want to move there today? Mom's hand hovered above the tablet. Victor's shoes stopped moving in the dining room. She typed 5 words. I do not consent. The tablet spoke them aloud in a flat electronic voice. Dad entered before anyone invited him. She has no idea what that phrase means. Rachel, or the therapist, programmed it. The evaluator turned toward him. Mr. Monroe, leave the room. This is my house. It belongs to Diane, Marisol said. Victor stared at her. The evaluator repeated the question in different forms. Mom consistently rejected Maple Glen, rejected the immediate move, and identified that Dad wanted the house sold. She also understood that remaining home would require assistance and that the dispute about money had not yet been resolved. The transport coordinator spoke quietly with her employees, then approached Marisol. Maple Glen will not proceed today, she said. Our intake department will require direct confirmation of consent or a court order establishing someone else's authority. Dad looked at Paige. Tell them your mother agreed. Paige did not answer. The van left without Mom. I wanted to cross the room, kneel beside her chair, and hold her until the fear passed. Instead, I stopped several feet away. Do you want me to come closer? I asked. Mom selected yes. When I reached her, she placed 3 fingers against my wrist. I covered her hand with mine, but did not speak for her. Late that afternoon, the judge signed a temporary order preserving the situation until the hearing. The order stopped the sale of the house, restricted major transfers, and barred Victor from using the power of attorney for transactions that benefited himself. It did not declare him guilty, settle the loan dispute, or end the marriage. A neutral fiduciary would review essential expenses. Mom remained in her home with a paid aide and access to her own attorney. Victor was permitted to stay elsewhere until the court reviewed the residence arrangement. He read the order at the dining table. You did this, he said to me. Mom said no. You have been waiting for years to turn her against me. I looked at the suitcase near the stairs. She packed that before her stroke. Victor's eyes followed mine, then returned to my face. Your mother was emotional. Colleen convinced her she needed space. The lie came too easily. The next morning, Colleen asked to meet us at North Creek Clinic. She arrived carrying Mom's email printed inside a manila envelope. No makeup, no jewelry, and none of the careful sympathy she had worn at the restaurant. Her hands shook when she placed the envelope on the table. I knew Diane wanted to leave, Colleen said. Mom stared at her. Colleen lowered her eyes. She asked to stay with me. I told her to talk to Victor because I thought leaving would destroy the family. Diane typed slowly. You told him. My aunt's chin trembled. I forwarded the email. Victor said Rachel was filling your head with ideas and that he needed to stop you before you made a mistake. I did not know about the email, I said. I know that now. Colleen wiped her palms against her skirt. I did not want Diane in my house because I was afraid Victor would come after me. I told myself I was encouraging reconciliation, but I was protecting my own comfort. Mom read the sentence on her screen twice before answering. You left me there. Colleen began to cry. I am sorry. Diane did not reach for her. She turned the tablet off and looked toward the window. Colleen's apology did not repair anything that morning, but her statement confirmed Mom had planned to leave before the stroke. She also provided the original emails and a message Victor sent after she warned him. Thank you, he had written. I will handle Diane before Rachel turns this into another family crisis. By the following afternoon, Leah received the first export from the communication provider's portal. The device at home had been cleared several times, but the clinical system retained session entries with dates, therapist notes, and login history. Marisol gathered us in a conference room. Paige had not arrived. Leah read only the entries Diane authorized for legal review. I do not want to sell. Victor answers for me. Paige used my card. I asked Rachel to come. I was leaving before the stroke. The statements appeared across several weeks. Different sessions. Different exercises. The wording changed slightly, but the meaning did not. Victor could no longer claim that one head shake at breakfast or one refusal at the door had been misunderstood. Mom had been expressing the same choices whenever someone gave her enough time. The final entry was dated 4 days before the restaurant dinner. He told me the loan was smaller. Marisol placed the printed log beside the home equity documents. This does not prove every transaction was fraudulent, she said. But it shows Diane knew about a loan, believed its size had been misrepresented, and repeatedly objected before Victor attempted the sale. Her phone buzzed against the table. After reading the message, Marisol's expression tightened. Victor filed a new accounting statement, she said. He claims Paige acted independently in every caregiver, payment, and personal charge. The conference room door opened behind us. Paige stood there holding her phone and a portable charger. Her eyes were swollen, but her voice did not shake. Then he should have deleted his instructions before blaming me, she said. Paige placed her phone on the conference table and kept both hands beside it. I'll give Marisol everything connected to Mom, she said. The invoices, the house, Maple Glen, all of it. But I'm getting my own lawyer before I answer questions about anything else. Marisol nodded. That is the correct decision. Paige looked at me as though she expected an argument. I had plenty. None of them belonged in that room. 3 days later, we entered the Franklin County Courthouse for the emergency hearing. Victor waited outside the courtroom with his attorney. He wore the charcoal suit he used for weddings, funerals, and any occasion where he expected strangers to mistake polish for character. His silver hair was combed neatly, and a caregiver support pin sat on his lapel. He looked tired on purpose. Paige stood near the elevators with a woman I assumed was her attorney. My sister had tied her hair back and removed the diamond bracelet she had worn at the restaurant. She did not come over to speak to me. Diane arrived with Leah and a court-approved aide. Mom wore a navy blouse and held her communication tablet against her lap. Her left hand rested on top of it. Victor moved toward her. Diane, honey, let me help you. The aide stepped between them. She has support. Dad's smile remained in place, but his eyes moved to me. Marisol touched my elbow before we entered. Today is about temporary control of the house, the power of attorney, and Diane's right to make these decisions. It is not a trial of their entire marriage. He took her money before the stroke. We will present the records that matter. He isolated her for months. We will present what supports the requested protection. And Colleen's emails? They establish prior intent. I lowered my voice. He has been doing this my whole life. Marisol held my gaze. Then do not let him turn your whole life into noise around the evidence we need today. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. No jury, no rows of reporters, just wood benches, a raised desk, microphones that made every paper movement sound too loud, and a judge who had already read more family disasters that morning than ours deserved to become. Victor's attorney spoke first. He described Dad as a devoted husband struggling through an impossible caregiving situation. He acknowledged accounting errors but blamed exhaustion, rushed decisions, and Paige's management of household expenses. Rachel Monroe, he said, had been largely absent until she learned the family home might be sold. Dad testified in the same measured tone he used at church dinners. "I have been beside my wife every day since her stroke," he said. "I learned her medications, changed our home, and gave up every part of my retirement to care for her." His attorney asked about me. Victor sighed before answering. "Rachel has always been strong-willed. She cares in her own way, but she becomes controlling when frightened. Diane is easily overwhelmed now, and Rachel mistakes emotional reactions for consent." Mom's fingers tightened around the tablet. Dad noticed. "My wife does that when she is anxious," he said, turning slightly toward the judge. "The tapping usually means she needs a break." Mom struck the tabletop 3 times. The judge looked toward her. "Mrs. Monroe, are you asking for a break?" Diane selected no. The tablet spoke the word aloud. Victor started to explain. "What she means is that she does not want to interrupt the proceeding, but she may not understand how long this will take." The judge raised one hand. "Mr. Monroe, you will not interpret her answers unless I ask you to." For the first time that morning, Dad's smile faltered. The independent evaluator testified next. She did not say Mom was capable of every financial decision. She explained that Diane had shown a consistent understanding of where she lived, what selling the house meant, what Maple Glen provided, and the consequences of revoking Victor's authority. "She requires additional time and supported methods to communicate," the evaluator said. "That delay should not be confused with an inability to understand." Leah's testimony stayed narrower. She described expressive aphasia, the letterboard, and the clinical process used to document Diane's choices. Victor's attorney asked whether Leah could determine legal capacity. "No," Leah replied. "I can explain communication." The court determines legal questions. The dated device entries were then admitted for the limited purpose Marisol had requested. Across several weeks, Mom had written that she did not want to sell, did not want Maple Glen, wanted her own attorney, and believed Victor was answering for her. Dad's attorney called the entries fragments without context. Marisol answered with the context. Different sessions, different prompts, the same choices. Then Victor tried to separate himself from the money. He said Paige had managed the cards because she handled shopping, transportation, and daily care. According to him, he had never instructed her to inflate an invoice or use Diane's money for personal expenses. "I trusted my daughter," he said. That trust may have been misplaced. Paige stared at him from the witness chair. Her attorney asked whether she had submitted false caregiver claims. "Yes," Paige said. The admission moved through the room without drama. No one gasped. The court clerk continued typing. "Did you know every claim was accurate when you submitted it?" her attorney asked. "No." "Did Victor Monroe direct how some of those claims should be written?" "Yes." Victor leaned toward his attorney, but Paige had already unlocked her phone. The messages appeared by date. Dad had told her to spread extra hours across the month so the totals would look reasonable. He instructed her to list the vehicle down payment as transportation access. When Paige worried about the concert weekend, he wrote that caregiver respite was legitimate and Mom would never object once the house became hers. Another email instructed the title company to move quickly because Rachel was trying to arrange another evaluation. Then came the draft affidavit. Victor had prepared it before the restaurant dinner. It described Paige as the person independently responsible for every questionable expense. He had kept screenshots of her purchases and copies of her invoices in a folder bearing her name. Dad's attorney objected to several conclusions Paige tried to draw. The judge allowed the records and stopped her from guessing why Victor created them. That did not help him. The final file was an audio recording Paige had made during a conversation with Dad after the clinic assessment. Her attorney established that Paige was a participant in the call and that the recording had not been edited. Victor's voice filled the courtroom. "Rachel needs to look cruel," he said, You need to look exhausted. Once people understand that, they'll accept why we had no choice. Paige's recorded voice asked, "What happens if they audit the expenses?" "We explain that you handled the cards," Dad replied. "You told me what to put down. I told you to keep your mother comfortable. Do not confuse guidance with responsibility." The recording ended. Paige looked directly at Victor. "I signed things I should not have signed. I used money that was not mine. I will answer for that. I will not answer for what you planned." Dad's face had gone still. Marisol did not ask me to testify. My records were already in evidence, and the hearing was about Mom, not whether I could tell the most painful version of our family history. Then Diane was given the opportunity to address the court. The aide placed the tablet at the correct angle. Leah sat several feet away and did not touch it. Mom needed nearly a minute to prepare the first sentence. Victor could not tolerate the wait. "What my wife really wants is stability," he began. "She has always trusted me to make the difficult decisions." Mom tapped the table 3 times. Every movement stopped. Her left index finger touched the screen, moved, paused, then corrected one letter. The device spoke when she finished. "Do not translate me." Dad looked down. Mom continued. The words came slowly, one sentence at a time. "I do not want to sell my house." A pause followed while she rested her hand. "I revoke Victor's authority." Another pause. "I want to live separately." She selected the next sentence. "I want a neutral person to manage money while records are reviewed." Victor shook his head. "Diane, this is Rachel's language." The judge warned him to remain silent. Mom looked at Paige before continuing. "Paige took money. Paige signed false bills." My sister lowered her eyes. Then Mom entered the rest. "Victor designed it. Victor told her what to write. Victor planned to blame her." Dad's attorney rose, but the judge allowed Diane to finish. Victor turned toward Mom, abandoning the careful tone he had used all morning. "I did what this family needed," he said. "Someone had to make decisions while everyone else fell apart." Mom's finger returned to the screen. The sentence took longer than the others. No one interrupted her. Not the judge, not the lawyers, not me. "You needed me silent." Victor stared at the tablet as if it had betrayed him. The court maintained the order stopping the sale. Dad's authority under the financial power of attorney was suspended, and a neutral fiduciary was appointed to manage necessary expenses and produce a full accounting. Victor's request for exclusive control over Mom's residence and contact was denied. The judge did not declare every transaction fraudulent. No police officer entered the courtroom. The loan, invoices, and possible misuse of Mom's signature would require further investigation. But Victor no longer controlled the money, the house, or who was permitted to hear Diane answer. Outside the courtroom, he caught up with me near the stone steps. "You wanted this," he said. "You wanted me to lose everything." I turned back. "No, I wanted Mom to be able to say no without you turning it into yes. You poisoned her against me. You heard her before the stroke. You just believed you could outlast her answer." Victor looked toward the courthouse doors, where Diane sat with the aide, while Marisol reviewed the written order. He waited for Mom to call him back. She did not. I walked over and crouched beside her chair. "We can arrange to return home once the locks and care schedule are handled. Is that what you want?" Diane looked at me for several seconds. Then she typed a sentence none of us had discussed. "I am not going back to that house." "I am not going back to that house," Mom typed. The sentence surprised me more than anything said inside the courtroom. For 16 days I had treated the house like a finish line. Stop the sale. Suspend Dad's authority. Return Mom to the place she had inherited from Granddad. I had forgotten that a protected cage was still a cage. Marisol arranged a temporary apartment at an assisted living community near North Creek Clinic. It was not memory care. Mom chose a 1-bedroom unit with wide doorways, an emergency call system, and staff available when she asked for help. The lease ran month to month, so she would not be trapped by another decision made too quickly. I showed her 3 places. She rejected the first because the dining room smelled like boiled cabbage, and the second because every staff member spoke to her in the voice adults use with toddlers. At the third, the leasing manager placed a written list of questions in front of Mom, sat back, and waited. Mom selected that one. The first evening, I unpacked her clothes while she directed me from the sofa. I placed her sweaters in the left drawer. She tapped twice against the armrest and pointed right. Sorry, I said, moving them. Her slippers went beside the bed. Her framed photograph of Paige and me sat on the dresser, and the suitcase remained open on the floor. The same suitcase she had packed to escape Victor now belonged to a move she had chosen herself. When I picked up my purse at 7:30, Mom looked toward the door. You are leaving? The tablet asked. I'm going home. I'll be back Thursday. Her fingers moved again. I thought this was home. The sentence pressed against every weak spot Victor had used in me. I wanted to cancel work, sleep on the couch, and prove I would never abandon her again. Instead, I checked that the evening aid had arrived and that Mom's medication was locked in the cabinet she controlled. You're my mother, I said. You're not my entire life, and I don't want to become your entire life either. Mom looked away. I left anyway. Thursday afternoon, I returned with groceries and found a note waiting on the kitchen counter. Thank you for coming back when you said. That was how we began again. Not with one large promise, but with smaller ones we could keep. The full accounting took months. The neutral fiduciary traced the home equity funds, the Maple Glen deposit, the staging expenses, and every caregiver reimbursement. Dad's investment partnership had already collapsed. Most of the $285,000 was gone, but enough remained in his retirement accounts and personal assets for Diane's attorney to seek repayment. The bank produced the original loan file. A handwriting examiner would not call the disputed signature conclusive by itself, but the notary record created a larger problem. The notary claimed Mom had signed in person on a Tuesday afternoon when clinic records placed her at a dental appointment across town. Phone location records showed Victor near the notary's office. That did not lead to handcuffs in a courtroom. It led to interviews, subpoenas, document reviews, and months when Dad's attorney stopped returning his calls as quickly as before. Victor eventually accepted a plea agreement involving financial exploitation and falsified documents. He received a period of confinement followed by probation, along with restitution obligations he could not dismiss by calling them family expenses. The church removed his caregiver award. His name disappeared from the committee website. People who once praised him began saying they had always found him controlling, though most of them had smiled beside him in photographs. Dad wrote to Mom several times. The first letter blamed me. The second blamed Paige. The third said stress had caused him to make mistakes. By the fourth, he had started calling the money a loan he intended to repay. Mom kept none of them. She asked Marisol to send one written response. I will decide if and when I speak with you. Do not have anyone answer for me. Victor moved into a small apartment outside Columbus after the court ordered him out of Mom's property. He sold his car, liquidated what remained of his investments, and lost the audience that had once treated every explanation as truth. Paige's consequences were different, but they were not light. Her attorney negotiated a restitution plan based on the false invoices and personal purchases she admitted. She sold the sport utility vehicle, closed her event business, and accepted probation with limits on any future work involving another person's money. Cooperation helped her avoid the worst possible outcome. It did not erase what she had done. Mom barred Paige from her accounts, medical portals, and legal decisions. After 3 months, Diane asked to see her. I objected before she finished typing. She did not protect you, I said. She protected herself after Dad turned on her. Mom selected, I know. Then why let her back? Because forgiveness is my risk to take. I started listing conditions. No money, no photographs, supervised visits, no access to the apartment without notice. Mom waited until I ran out of breath. Beside me, she typed, not in front of me. The words stopped me. I won't prevent you from seeing her, I said. But I am not rebuilding my relationship with Paige because you chose to rebuild yours. Mom nodded. That was our new arrangement. She did not control my forgiveness, and I did not control her mercy. Paige's first visit lasted 20 minutes. A staff member remained nearby, and Paige left her phone in the office. She brought no flowers, no gifts, and no speech about being misunderstood. I cared for you, she told Mom, and I used you. Both happened. Mom answered through the tablet. Both are true. I did not attend the next visit. 6 months after the hearing, Mom asked me to meet her at the house. The lawn had grown uneven. Dust covered the hallway table, and bright rectangles marked the walls where Victor had removed framed photographs. Mom moved slowly from room to room, touching the pantry door, Granddad's desk, and the pencil marks showing our childhood heights. I mistook the visit for grief. "We can hire someone to make the downstairs accessible again," I said. "You could keep the apartment and come back later." Mom shook her head. At the kitchen table, she opened a folder containing an independent appraisal and 2 listing proposals. She had chosen to sell. "You fought so hard to keep this house," I said. Mom typed 4 words. "I fought to choose." The answer settled the argument. She sold the house 4 months later, after the disputed debt and liens were addressed. The proceeds bought her a smaller, accessible condo near the clinic. She placed the remaining funds under the management of an independent fiduciary and created a modest grant in Granddad's name to help adults with aphasia obtain communication devices. She gave neither Paige nor me the house. For the first time in our family, property was not used as a reward for obedience. My relationship with Mom remained uneven. Some days, conversation came easily. On others, one sentence took several minutes, and my old habits returned before I noticed them. Once, she began saying, "I wanted," and I guessed coffee, a sweater, then the window closed. Mom pushed the cup away and typed, "Silence. I wanted silence." After that, I learned to wait. Not perfectly, better. One Thursday evening, Mom used her device to tell me what she had avoided saying for years. "I let your father call you cold because it kept him from turning his anger on me." She paused, then continued, "I praised you for being strong because then I did not have to ask if you were tired." I kept my hands flat against my knees. "You didn't just let me grow up early," I said. "You rewarded me for never needing anything." Mom reached toward me. I pulled my hand back before she touched it. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I'm still angry." Her answer came without tears or excuses. Both can be true. A few weeks later, I brought up the message I had ignored before her stroke. "I was right that I could not keep fixing your marriage," I said. "But I should have asked whether you were safe." Mom looked down at the tablet. "You should have asked," she typed. "I should have answered before I needed rescuing." Neither of us carried all the blame. Neither of us walked away clean. 11 months after the restaurant dinner, Mom invited me to a small diner near her new condo. She ordered coffee aloud, taking 3 attempts to finish the word. The server waited without guessing. Over grilled cheese and tomato soup, Mom gave me a small cardboard box. Inside were the note cards she had used during therapy. "Do not answer for me. I want Rachel. I do not want to sell. I was leaving. Let me be slow." The final card read, "You were my daughter, before you were my defender." "And now?" I asked. "Now you can be only my daughter. I don't know how." Mom placed 3 fingers against my wrist and tapped the rhythm she had used before spelling bees, job interviews, and the night my father tried to seat me outside my own family. "Slow," she said. When the server returned, she asked whether we wanted one check or separate checks. Mom selected separate. She paid for her soup and coffee with her own card. I paid for mine. Before we stood, she tapped 3 times on the table. I tapped 3 times back. For most of my life, my family had confused paying the bill with earning a place at the table. That evening, Mom and I paid for our own meals. And neither of us had to purchase the right to belong. You do not prove your love by surrendering your money, your future, or your right to make your own decisions. When a family member demands obedience as payment for belonging, slow down, read every document, keep copies, and refuse to sign anything you do not fully understand. If an older parent has difficulty speaking, do not assume that person cannot think, choose, or recognize abuse. Give them time, use communication support, and make sure their wishes are heard without another relative answering for them. Remember that setting boundaries is not abandonment. You can help someone without becoming their unpaid caregiver, financial manager, or permanent rescuer. Admit your mistakes when you fail to listen, but never accept blame for another person's lies, theft, or controlling behavior. Real support means standing beside someone, not taking control of their life. Rachel and Diane did not repair years of damage in one conversation. They rebuilt trust through honest apologies, clear limits, and promises they could keep. If this story reminded you that your voice and choices matter, Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more stories about women who protect their dignity, face the truth, and choose a wiser path forward together.